Alright, great roll on the shirt. Yes. Welcome to the Education Hackathon. There's still people grabbing a shirt, but we have exactly 1 hour to present this, and then we have to get rid of the stage. So we're doing this very quickly, and therefore I want to welcome you. I'm Nick van Breda, I'm the organizer together with Puk Simons, and my partner Dennis is somewhere in the back. Dennis is also filming, but he's also a volunteer for the security, so he's doing a lot of roles today. This is for changing education. We're all striving for a more personalized way of education, and therefore we partner up with some great initiatives, and from startups to institutes that are doing everything to make education the best as possible for children, but also for higher education and university, and even beyond that. The main goal is to create an environment where you can lifelong learn, place and time independent. So the cases also will be broader than just school context. And education can be applied in every sector, and that's why it's so important, and that's why I'm happy that you're all here together with us to join the Education Hackathon. I want to present Tijl Koenderink. He's going to give an opening keynote about the future of education. He's a great guy that started his own school, and he has a lot of didactic research he has done. So he knows a lot about education and a lot about the system of education that it is today and is tomorrow. Puk is going to present the other guys.
Well, we got 3 cases today where you can choose from, and go well. One is Kennisnet, and we've got a lot of mentors for Kennisnet. If Kennisnet people want to raise their hands, so if you're going to choose the Kennisnet case, talk to them. Next we have Advanced Innovative Studio. We've got a lot of mentors for that one too. If those people can raise up their hands, okay, great. And last we got Presente. We got a lot of mentors for those too. Presente, put your hands up. Okay, great. I'm going to give the word to Tijl. A lot of luck and a lot of pleasure.
The challenge is, when talking about the future, is that our brain has a lot of trouble comprehending it. Our brain tends to think about the future in incremental ways. We think about how the current situation looks and what it would be when it's just a little bit better. But that's not actually how the future works, especially at this time. The future will be different. Try to imagine explaining a concept like Tinder, like what Tinder will do for your love life, to a caveman. You're trying to explain to him, this Tinder thing will really help you get women. His response will be, is it like, getting a lot of meat into the village? No, not quite. Is it like getting a big club or something? No, not quite. It's such a different concept to it that it's impossible for him to comprehend what it would mean and what it would be. So when I'm here, I'm supposed to, tell a story, what will the education of the future look like? But it's hard to comprehend because the story will start with, little Johnny goes to school in, 2050, but probably Johnny won't go to school. The assumption that there will be something like a school then, it's probably not true. There won't be this building that you go to. There won't be this classroom setting that you go to. It will probably be a much more interactive form. But it's hard to comprehend from where we are now. Learning subjects from a source. When we think about personalized learning, we still think about cutting up a book and putting it into a computer. But we still think of a new version of a book, as opposed to a completely different approach to learning. Reaching a degree. Degrees will probably be useless in about 20 years, because it's such an outdated way of looking at gathering knowledge. And having teachers. There is a person who will teach you geography. That concept probably will be outdated too. So we have to look at something completely different. And what I'm going to do is give you an overview of different things that are happening and that are going to happen in the future, and I'm going to give some examples. And from there on, I want to help you get practical. First, I'm going to explain to you why you should listen to me. Why should this guy tell you what the future is going to be like? Then I'm going to try to prove that change is coming, and not just a little bit, but a lot of it. What will the major areas of change be? what will education look like in the far future, and what will be the next step. And from there on I want to look at how technology can have a humanizing effect. Because usually we look at technology as an isolating effect, that we get more individual, but it should bring us together as people. And then I'm going to look at what does it mean for me, but especially what does it mean for you. What can you do with that, especially in the light of this hackathon. So why should you listen to me? I'm a warning of how the school system can go wrong. I spent 2 years longer than you should in high school. I went to 3 schools, almost got kicked out. It went wrong in almost every way. Even though on paper I've been proven to be extremely talented. But it really didn't show in the school system. And I became an entrepreneur. I set up 3 different companies. We helped over 400 different schools change their approach to education, especially towards gifted children. So I've seen a lot of schools from the inside, and I've seen how you can get schools to change. I have an IT background. Actually, I had an IT company. I did complex data analysis, so I know a little bit about the technical side too. And I'm the founder of several schools. We started the School of Understanding, which started late last August, and now we've got 150 kids, so we'll be 230 kids after the summer. The second school is coming with already a waiting list. It's not even open, we already have a waiting list for kids who want to sign up. So change is possible. We started it, and we're going to make it happen. And I really made this my mission. My life is about changing education, not just here, but around the world. So the first thing is change coming? Because there's a lot of talk about change, but is it really the case? Well, one of the most prominent people who's trying to prove that is Ray Kurzweil. He is the leader of innovation at Google, and he did a lot of inventions, and he's been talking about the singularity point. And what he did is he looked at, what some of you might know, Moore's Law, the fact that about every 18 months the amount of computing power for the same amount of money doubles. But doubling means an exponential change. It doesn't mean a linear change, but it goes up faster and faster and faster. But if we try to plot that over, for instance, artificial intelligence, then it starts out that we take a long time to get to the point of having an insect brain being simulated by a computer. But by the time you get there, within 20 or 30 years, you get to human brains. And then within just a couple of years, you get to all human brains. So the exponential curve makes that change go faster and faster and faster. And he also showed this based on the different developments that we've had in humanity, from life starting to us walking, to more recent things like electricity and personal computers. And you see the amount of time between those changes is shorter and shorter. And what he proposes is that there will be a point that there will be almost unlimited change in a single moment. Because by the time that the computer becomes as smart as the 10 smartest people in the world, those 10 computers in one computer will start developing the new computer that's even smarter than themselves. So that will become an exponential change, which is almost impossible to predict what that will mean. So change will come and it will go faster and faster and faster. What are some of the areas that in the coming time will change the most? Because Ray Kurzweil founded the Singularity University, which is a university revolving around this transformational change, and there's a couple of areas they're following and they're very actively involved in. The first is big data and data science. We're spending more and more money and time to gather as much data as possible, analyze and come up with new answers. Netflix spent over 100 million euros, or dollars actually, to predict what movie you will like, because if they get better at that, you will stick around longer and spend more money with them. And we're getting better and better at that data analysis. We're getting more and better sensors. One of the things is the X Prize, you might have heard of it, which is a global challenge to tackle big problems. And one of the X Prizes is the company that's the first one to produce a real tricorder. And maybe you know it from Star Trek, it's a tricorder, it's what the doctor uses. He just goes bleep, 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 and the thing tells you what's going on. The assignment is to build one, and I think you get like 10 or 15 million if you're able to do that. And Xanadu pretty much did that. A device which any mom or any person can use to diagnose the most common illnesses, with a lot of sensors on board, artificial intelligence, to be able to predict those things. Imagine that we've got this device that fits in your hand that can do pretty much what a doctor 50 years ago wouldn't even be able to do because he didn't have the tools yet. Virtual augmented reality. You have things like Oculus Rift, you've got the HoloLens, all these different things where it's reached the point that you see articles, there's been a lot of attention to this lately, but that in exhibition booths, and might be around here as well, that the point has been reached that people put this thing on, they get experience, and at some point in the experience, you see people throwing the goggles off and running away scared. It was so immersive that they actually got such a deep writing experience that they threw it off, and they couldn't relate to it as being, oh, I'm just in the experience, but it was so real to them that they got this real visceral reaction. So this is reaching a new point. Artificial intelligence. And people who created Syria are creating Viv, which is a new platform that you can actually interactively interact with and just ask questions and get complicated assignments. You know, find the best, flight for me to go from here to there with these parameters. And the thing analyzes it, collects all data, and gives you the answer. Bioinformatics and neuroscience. And a friend of mine started a company I've invested in, Openening, which is doing personalized DNA analysis. I took a little swab from the inside of my cheek, and now I've got a report about 25 pages saying which sports I should do, whether I'm better at, athlete, long-term sport, or power sports, what my recovery rate will be, what injuries I most likely will have or not have if I interact with sports a lot. So we get personalized DNA analysis for, $100, $200, which is again something that 20 years ago you weren't even able to do. And local production, 3D printing. 3D printers are becoming more and more prevalent. One of the patent requests that Amazon has done is that you can order something, and they've got a truck, and in the back of the truck is a 3D printer, and when it's driving you to deliver it, it's actually building what you ordered. So you're ordering something that's custom made with your name, with your colors, and it's building it while it's driving towards you. So these things are becoming more and more possible. So what does that mean for education? So these are some big changes, but what is that going to mean for education? This big data and data science, a friend of mine set up Leer Unique, which uses big data, in this case the assignments that kids have done in school, so a lot of interactions, there's a lot of material on that. And he created a lot of dashboards based on that, so you can actually see growth curves, but not just that, he created a dyslexia years before it becomes apparent. Because of the types of error a kid makes when he's 6, we can predict that at 7 or 8 he might be proven to have dyslexia, and we might actually prevent it because we can see the pattern. There are algorithms we can use, and we can predict whether or not that's going to be the case and how to support it. And that's just like a teeny tiny tip of the iceberg. Because there's so much data we can analyze, we can be so much more personalized and support kids better. Virtual and augmented reality. You see that, for instance, doctors now can learn about anatomy using virtual reality and actually deconstruct a brain or a human and actually look at it from 3D and turn it around. Same about that they have people learning how to work on fighter jets. They can actually take it apart, looking through virtual reality without having to buy one of these. So you can have an entire classroom of 60-year-olds take apart a $100 million device without needing to have it there. So that adds to the reality of the experience. We're also getting more and better sensors. One of the companies I'm working with is called Reveal. And they created this little band, and it's pretty simple. It measures stress level. And why is that important? They've made this for autistic kids. Because the problem with a lot of kids who have autism is that on the outside you don't see a lot. Not a lot's happening. But suddenly at some point they escalate. And they have calamity and they get angry and they start throwing stuff or screaming stuff. They really get into a very much stressful fight or flight response. What they did is create a bracelet so you can measure the stress response, and the teacher has a little app on the phone, and the app will say, little Johnny is already almost two-thirds of the way of the stress level that last week was the level that he got really upset. So we can predict that, and we don't have to have that happen anymore. We can get a little timeout, or we can support it, we can give all kinds of support. And this seems like a little thing, but this makes it possible for some kids who now get sent out of the school system because they're not manageable anymore, because everybody's afraid when they get angry or they run away or they start screaming, it's not possible anymore. We can manage that in a regular education system. So we're opening up the thousands of kids who can't follow regular education. By tracking them and by giving the teacher more information, we can support the kid better. Artificial intelligence. There was an example in the US where a teaching assistant that was helping online, they replaced him with an artificial intelligence bot. And after a couple of months, in the beginning some people suspected something, after a couple of months they could answer things like 80 or 90% of the questions that students had, and the students didn't know it was a computer. So we can have all these interactions, like personal interactions that would be really expensive or impossible to do. The computer can take care of that. And, local production 3D printing, one of the things that a lot of kids, and probably with you as an audience you can relate to that, liked about learning to program is that you can build something real. In the school system, a lot of kids feel like I'm in a sandbox. I can pretend to do things, I can play around, but it's not real. But once I found a computer, I learned to program, even with HTML or whatever language I learned, I could build something real. I was 6 years old, I was 9 years old, and I could decide I'm going to build something. And the cool thing is with 3D printing, we can take it one step further, not just virtual stuff we can build, we can actually build physical stuff. And this is the mini toy, $299, a 3D printer, that you can use in your classroom with all kinds of apps, like low threshold. So this means that we can do a lot of different stuff, a lot of things that you used to not be able to do. And in bioinformatics and neuroscience, what if we can use that DNA information to customize education to you? As opposed to saying everybody needs to have the same level in math, for instance, we can maybe determine what is your ability to learn, what are your learning styles, and how can we adapt to that faster than by trial and error. But to adjust it to you, just like with the sports team, we can work with your talents and find out what they are. Then we can make a difference in that. I think the more fundamental change is what do you learn? Because technology is nice, but it's always a means to an end. And if you look at the future, you can divide the future up in kind of 3 different ways of looking at it. You have the known future. The known future is that we know that kids are going to school now and they're going to be a lawyer. We can teach you what you need to know to become a lawyer. There's just a list of stuff you need to know, we can check it off and then you're ready. But some people we need to prepare for the unknown. We need to put them in a place, for instance, when you're going to be a project manager on an IT project. We don't know what project you're going to do, so we can't teach you how to do IT in healthcare, how to do IT in education. But we can teach you processes and skills. That whether you're in healthcare or whether you're in education, the skills will help you navigate that unknown field. But there's also a field of the unknowable. Because the fields you're going to be in are unknown, but you can't know them. But what life is going to be like on Mars when we get there is unknowable. There's nothing we can do now to predict what you need to have. So what should education do? To prepare you for the known, we need knowledge. We need to tell you what to do. To prepare you for the unknown, we need to teach you skills. Because with skills you can navigate the unknown. But with the unknowable, we need to train your attitude. Because the only way to deal with the unknown and the uncertainty that goes with it is perseverance, optimism. Looking at a way that's not helpless but having an internal locus of control. The way you deal with that. And this is what you see in startups. The difference between a startup that wins and makes it and one that doesn't make it isn't the amount of skill, isn't the amount of knowledge, isn't the amount of degrees, but the attitude of the people running it. If they're optimists, if they're persevering, if they've got grit and they're like, I'm going to go for it and I don't care what happens along the way, they'll find the skills, they'll find the knowledge. And if they think, I've got an MBA and I know all the things that I should know to start a company, they'll crash. Because reality doesn't look like the way you get taught in a textbook. And I love this quote by Eric Hoffer. In times of change, the learners will inherit the earth, while the learners will find themselves beautifully equipped to deal with a world that no longer exists. And this is what we're seeing more and more. The world that we've been prepared for doesn't exist anymore. So we need to be prepared to learn how to deal with the new world. The most exciting changes, knowledge is becoming a commodity. If you want, you can go through an entire MIT university course. And so it used to be that you needed money to get knowledge. All the knowledge is available if you go online. We do have to look at what are we as humans good at, as opposed to machines. Because machines can do a lot of cool stuff, they can replace them in a lot of areas, but they're not empathic, they're not creative. So this is what we need to focus on. This is what's going to save your job. If you're empathic, if you're creative, you're doing the things that machines cannot do. We're going to be more and more connected with real life. That's one of the things that we're looking at here too. Like school shouldn't be the sandbox that we're going to separate you from the world for 80 years and then we're going to throw you into the world. but should be connected with the world the entire way. And it's going to be the big equalizer. Because even when you're in, Uganda, you can still go online and still all knowledge is available. So you don't have, the bad luck of being born in Uganda. The knowledge is there and the internet will come there soon. Progress-based. We will guide kids more based on progress than on, are you a good 8-year-old? And it will be more inclusive, as opposed to, you're autistic, you should go to a special school. More and more kids get the chance to do all these kinds of education. So what will be the next step? Because I kind of look forward into the future. What will be the next step? And I had the luck of being a juror at a competition in Amsterdam. And in the competition they asked for all kinds of people come up with ideas for a new type of school. Anybody could send in ideas. There were about 250 applicants, and there were about 50 who got the chance to present. And there was a couple of teams that came up. And those are what I think will be the next step. The first is personalized education. The thinking that you are 8 years old, and you should get the materials that every 8-year-old gets is completely outdated. Because some kids are 10-year-olds and they do math at a 50-year-old level, and they do language or spelling at a 7-year-old. So that should be personalized, it should not be age-bound. The curriculum should be aimed at life. That's some archaic theory that you need to learn, but on things you need to be able to live. It should be connected with community. It should not be isolated. There should be no boundaries between schools. Why do you have primary school and then you leave primary school, you go to middle school, and then you leave middle school, you go to high school, and in high school you can't ask the middle school question, but also you can't ask the university question, because that's not where we are. It should be one flowing movement, actually from 0 to the end of your life. School should assume differences between students. It's not that we're trying to cope with the differences and trying to survive them, we're assuming everybody's different. Because everybody is different. And it should make use of technology. We always should be making use of technology every step along the way, because it's a shame not to. You shouldn't take too small steps. And 2 examples is, I had a presentation by Samsung, which is, by the way, a great company. I've got one of their phones. But their presentation was about the classroom of the future. And what they showed me was a bunch of laptops and TV screens and printers. And proudly they were announcing, and it all works together. And I'm like, no shit, I hope you got it to work together after 20 years of working with this stuff. But that's not the future. That's just getting the basics right. And the same happens with, methods in school. We get a new math method, and it's on the iPad. We're really proud. And what is it? Just a PDF document on an iPad. It's still the same. But you click on it and you get a little movie. Woo! That's exciting. Those are such small steps, they really don't make a difference. I mean, they make the difference in the backs of students that don't have to lug the books around, but if that's the goal, I hope we're aiming a little bit higher. So why is change so hard? When we look back, we only see the successes, but a lot of them actually don't make it. And I know that I talked a lot with the government, the Ministry of Education, and it's the country's greatest capital in 2 ways. We're spending a huge amount of money on education, and it's the kids. And actually, an inspector of the school inspection once said that you can do your experiment over. You can start a school again. So you try to start a good school, it doesn't work out, you just do it again. But the kids that were in your school, they can't redo their school time. And that's a big risk. We don't want to sacrifice kids to your experiments. And that's actually a valid point. And there's a matter of ownership. Nobody is the owner of the education system. So nobody can decide to change it, because there's so many levels, and that has advantages and disadvantages. So, how are we going to change that? You can take the revolutionary approach, and then you just, spend a lot of money on it, throw money at the problem, you buy all kinds of new stuff, and then things will be right. Leap into the future. But there are a couple of caveats, because it's kind of risky. One, it doesn't have high success rates. If you do a startup that's way out there, then the chances of it succeeding are lower than when you make incremental steps. One other thing is that it's important to stick to your specialty and know what it is. What I see a lot is, for instance, at competition, that people have a specific idea about education. For instance, kids should move more. If kids would meditate, they would learn more. Both are true. But if you only have, as a theory, kids should meditate more, are you then capable of setting up an entire school and doing the finance of the school and building management and reaching the core curriculum goals? There's so many specialties that go into setting up a school that you shouldn't, like if you look at Elon Musk, who set up Tesla, he had an idea of I want to do use battery supplied cars, and he had to invent the entire product line from scratch. This guy had to do so much, he's best friends with Larry Page, he threw $1 billion at it, and he's having trouble. Because some problems are complex, there are so many different areas that need to be managed. Find ways to go from just your early adopters to the majority, because that's where usually the business is. And be pragmatically optimistic. You have to be an optimist, otherwise you don't start these things. But you do have to be pragmatic. And how am I going to go about it? How am I going to make this work? So that's the evolutionary approach. And I use the Trojan horse approach. You sell something that people want to have, and then you give them what they should have been asking for in the first place. And you try to combine the two. That's the safest way of a business model where you can actually make a big change. And do that in connection with the current needs. But do have a vision of this is where we're going to go in the future. So what are my next step? I'm going to go for the revolution. I'm going to set up schools all around the world. Because I think by setting them up, I can control them, I can make the biggest difference. I invest in mentor startups that have big difference they can make, and I develop tools. And the evolutionary approach is to help schools transform. Like how can we help schools make the next step? We use a 3D printer, or teach programming, or teach those mindsets, and push against the system non-stop and support the incremental change. So what are your next steps? One is think big and fearless. Never be afraid to have a huge goal and go for it. But do connect it with the current need. Because you might be 10 steps ahead, and you do need to connect with people who can only see 1 or 2 steps ahead. Decide in what area you're going to work. Are you going to work in the known? Then you can look at how can I make things more efficient. The known is learning vocabulary. You can make a food ninja program that helps kids to learn vocabulary more effectively. So then you're more efficient in the known area. You can go to the unknown area and see how can we support the tools and the skills that kids need. So how can you use Scrum, for instance, in education? Those are wonderful tools that you can build to support that. How are we going to go towards the unknowable? How can we support people making a huge leap? And how can we work in incremental sprints? I love the Scrum methodology of trying something, building something, try it out in practice. Build, try, build, try. Don't go to your ivory tower and think up a solution, spend a year and a half and spend $150,000 of somebody else's money. It's good fun, I can tell you, but it usually doesn't warrant a lot of change. So always go back to practice, find schools to work with, run pilots, and get support and work together. And one thing that I really want to emphasize is be open, ethical, and transparent. And I love what Nick's doing with that, with the cloud that you're going to do in a little bit. So don't be that guy that's going to have this vendor locking system. I've got this system, this is my knowledge, you can't touch it. Have open APIs, work together with everybody, because we're doing the same thing. We're trying to change the system. But most important, find something you're passionate about, because it's hard. Changing the world is hard work. And that's okay. Because if you're doing something you're passionate about, you're willing to put in the hours, and then you can make a difference. And it's definitely worthwhile. So never let anybody take you away from that goal. Let's all fight for a better education system because it needs an overhaul. It's way overdue. Thank you so much for your attention.